This video contains descriptions and pictures of abuse towards autistic children, or the areas that have been used to abuse autistic children. Please continue with this video with caution. If this subject matter may cause you distress, please don't watch the video. The news articles, report, and documentary are all in the description of this video below. Hi everyone, and welcome back to One Autistic Person, or welcome to One Autistic Person if this is the first video that you're watching. This video is not going to be like my other videos. I thought that I'd probably put these videos off a little bit until I had grown a little bit as a channel. If I do grow, hopefully I will continue to grow. But something came up on the news at the beginning of this week which has really pushed me into a really bad place, and I've had meltdowns and all sorts because of it, and I've become really hyper focused on the fact that this has happened, and also the backlash or lack thereof in relation to various issues around education institutions regarding people who are autistic or generally neurodivergent or have learning disabilities within the UK, and I felt like I needed to do this video now. So I will warn you, it's like I say, like nothing else that I've done before so far, and it does have my opinion based on it and why these things are happening and how we can look at advocating both for ourselves but also for people who might not be able to advocate for themselves. So what I'm going to do is it actually came on the back of a news article that came from the BBC. What I'm going to first do is I am going to read through that news article so that there's context to it. I understand that not everybody's going to want to sit and listen to me jabber on and probably stumble over my words as I read that news article. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the timestamp here of when I finish talking about the actual article, or reading through the article, and start talking about it. And then that means if you want to read the article, which is what I probably would do, I'd probably skip forward. I'd read the article and then skip forward. And you might want to watch also there's two videos in there as well, one attached specifically to this article and one that's a panorama investigation, which is something that the BBC does to investigate generally wrongdoing within institutions. Between the two of them, it's 17 minutes for one of them, and it's about 30 minutes for the other. I am going to go more in depth into the one that I'm going to do the news article about, but I think there is an intrinsic link between the two, and they were around about the same time that they happened. This has just become a bigger thing because there was a police investigation into it earlier this year during the summer. So I'm going to go. So I'm going to read through the article now, and then we will go through, like I say, my thoughts on it, and I'm sure I will become very ranty, so I apologise for that. But it's something that is extremely frustrated me and upset me deeply, and I think I'd like to share it with as many people as possible. So if anybody hasn't seen this, then if you want to look further into it, if you want to do any advocacy work on the back of it or anything like that, then I just feel we should be highlighting this when it happens to people within the neurodivergent and learning disabilities sort of area of the world. So I apologise, like I say, I will probably stumble over my words quite a bit as I do when I'm reading out. I may even more so with this, simply because of the fact that it is quite emotive to me, and it is quite long, so bear with me. So, CCT from a school obtained by the BBC shows autistic children being shoved into padded rooms, thrown to the floor, restrained by the neck, or left alone sitting in vomit. The footage from Whitefield School in North East London resembles torture, one safeguarding expert told us. It shows for the first time the reality of what pupils faced. A police investigation into the abuse footage taken inside the special school's calming rooms, I say calming rooms, you'll see what I mean when we go through that later, between 2014 and 2017 ended earlier this summer without any charges. However, parents say they have been left to deal with the trauma. The school says new leadership found the footage after the rooms had been shut and shared it with the police. About 40 children with learning disabilities, severe mental disorders were confined for hours in the rooms, typically without food or drink. 6 of the families have agreed for the BBC to show the footage. They wanted us to reveal the scale and severity of the trauma their children had experienced, which they feel they have been misled about. On the actual article, there is a short 1 minute and 5 second video that sort of snapshots it, and I am going to show a few stills of that later. I'm not going to actually show the video for various reasons. One, because it's quite traumatic, and two, because BBC copyright. I could even have issues with showing the stills, but I just wanted to show sort of some context in relation to it later on in the video. In the footage seen by the BBC, the only time staff at the school in Walthamstow intervene once children are inside the rooms is when a boy repeatedly throws his shoes at the CCTV cameras. They race in to stop him, with one teaching assistant apparently striking him. It broke my heart, said the mother of one of the abused children after viewing the CCTV for the first time. You wouldn't even do that to a dog. Even now, government guidance says only that removing disruptive pupils from classrooms in England must be done for a limited duration and facilities must be suitable. The BBC has also found evidence of mistreatment in seclusion rooms at other schools across the UK. One autistic child was kept inside a cage. Meanwhile, local MP Sir Ian Duncan Smith said the Whitefield school footage must lead to profound change and described it as jaw-dropping. Safeguarding expert Elizabeth Swan said it was easily the worst footage she had seen. You look at the children and they are being defeated and responding to that treatment with self-injurious behaviour. It's torture, she said. Whitefield School was rated as outstanding until 2017. Ofsted discovered the use of bare, padded rooms without windows to seclude children. But the existence of CCTV footage did not become public until 2021, when the BBC learned an investigation had been launched after the discovery of a box of USB memory sticks containing 500 hours of disturbing footage from inside the rooms. In April, we, the BBC, exposed how safeguarding investigations commissioned by the school had proven that 6 Whitefield staff had abused pupils, but they were not referred to the government's disclosure and barring service, which can ban people from working with children, and 3 of them continue to work at the school. Since we began investigating, we have obtained leaked school and council documents and spoken to 17 of the 39 affected families. Jamie's mother, Deborah, watched the calming room. I've got to do that every time. Calming room footage after police formally invited families to view the abuse following our report in April. You saw them open the door, whack Jack in his back. He went flying on the floor. She said, fighting back tears, obviously. Jamie's coat and bag were placed inside the room with him. Deborah says this shows that it was calculated that Jamie would remain there until the end of the day, even if he calmed down. So punishment. That's punishment. That is not trying to say to him, if you calm down, we will let you out, which I have issue with in itself. But that is calculated to say you are being punished and going to stay in here for the rest of this day. She says Jamie suffered his first ever seizure after he began being placed in the calming rooms, and believes his treatment directly resulted in his epilepsy. Now, I've looked into this, and as it says here as well, stress can contribute to the development of epilepsy or trigger seizures in those with the condition. So, direct causal link there. Other families told the BBC their children developed PTSD. Really? That's shocking, isn't it? That's sarcasm, by the way. After being placed in the calming rooms, one child's family said he suffered severe psychological damage and was later detained in a mental hospital because he was at risk of harming himself. Parents said they complained to the school about unexplained injuries and the use of the rooms, but this did not lead to investigation. Even though the evidence from the CCTV cameras was available, Deborah says it's a cover up from higher up. I don't see how they could get away with this level of abuse and no one's accountable. Another family complained after their son repeatedly returned home with injuries to his nose. The CCTV footage leaked to the BBC shows the boy punching himself in the nose while alone inside the room. The BBC has spent months trying to find out who knew about concerns around the use of the rooms and why there was no investigation into harm suffered by children in the calming rooms following Ofsted's 2017 visit. After the rooms were shut down, a review by a director of the trust running the school reported that governors and a staff member from the local council, Waltham Forest, had visited the rooms, but it did not record any concerns being raised at the time. The BBC has learned that the job of reviewing CCTV was largely left to a single teaching assistant. Once a week, she downloaded the footage and compared it with written staff observations before sharing any incidents and concerns with bosses. But she failed to report many of the 20 plus clips showing excessive force, according to a school safeguarding investigation into her conduct, which concluded she turned a blind eye to the findings. It also found that she had abused a child herself by using a pad used for rugby training to push them into the corner of a room. Despite these findings, she was not sacked. Just let that sink in, because there's further issues here that come. Sacking is like the base level of this for me. It's very clear from the footage. If you watch the footage, then you'll see that it's very clear that people should have been sacked for this, and more than that. So it's then got a sort of it's got sort of a heading here that says "left in a cage." She told the investigation that contacting the school's leadership was hard to do as a teaching assistant, and had become desensitized to the footage, according to records of her interview obtained by the BBC. A different teaching assistant told the safeguarding investigator that she had seen footage of a colleague observing a child masturbating for over an hour. Police reported that they were unable to corroborate what she said. The BBC has also uncovered other findings affecting children with special education needs placed in seclusion across the UK, with an autistic child being kept in a cage at one school about 10 years ago. The area below a stairwell was enclosed by a cage and another cage with a mattress inside at a school called Include in Bury St Edmunds. I'm not sure how you pronounce that, because we pronounce it differently, which offers alternative provision for children outside mainstream education and is run by the charity Catch-22. The mother of the autistic child only discovered these cages were in use when she visited the school without an appointment, having grown concerned about the real nature of what was referred to as the den. The den. I've not put a picture of this into the slides that I've put later because it is really traumatic, and I don't really want to cause too much trauma for people. So again, this is in the actual news article that I'll put in from the BBC. There is a picture of it, and it looks like, to me, it looks like a death row cell in America. She said the stairwell cage could be covered by a blanket when the child was shouting, and that her son was sometimes kept inside one of these cages for 6 hours. 6 hours without water or access to a toilet. And she said even an animal wouldn't have been treated like this and left in a cage that long. Absolutely not. Having worked with animals in animal charities, that is it's not even how animals are treated. So this is disgraceful. It's absolutely disgraceful. Anyway, back to the news report. Council records state that Ofsted were informed about what the mother found, but there was no investigation. Ofsted now says it cannot find a record of a complaint. So there's two concerns there. One, either they've lost that or it's being destroyed. I believe that the mother did make this complaint, so it's clear that either they're covering something up here, or that they are so incompetent that they're not fit for purpose. Catch-22 says the spaces were used by previous leadership, and a 2018 council report concluded that there was no proof pupils were locked inside. Well, what was the purpose of them? If they're there, what is the purpose of the cage? What, to just have it there? Did they? It makes no sense. Was it used to put teachers in when they were misbehaving? Absolutely ridiculous to say there was no proof to say it was being used. That it being there in the first place is a problem, because the only other reason you could potentially have it there is for a deterrent, as a threat. So why, if it not being used, did it not bring a bigger question that needed to be looked into? Anyway, getting to that in a second, Jason. Read the report. Regulation of the use and design of calming rooms is now urgently needed, according to Sir Ian Duncan-Smith. Following our investigation in April, the Children's Commissioner also called for changes to guidance on the use of seclusion in special schools, which has not happened. The Department for Education says it's looking at ways to strengthen it. What does that even mean? This needs a full report, not just two words of looking and strengthening. The Metropolitan Police says it continues to conduct wider inquiries, and it does have that in quotation marks, wider inquiries about Whitefield, not relating to abuse. The Crown Prosecution Service declined to comment, as they always do. They're not held accountable for anything. Our Crown Prosecution Service is ridiculous. The Flourish Trust, which runs Whitefield, says it has learned from the findings in the case. Okay, that's great, but what's happening to the people who carried this out? It's clear that this is abuse. It's clear that this is not standard expectation of how you treat any human being, especially not people that are in a special education needs school. Ofsted says responsibility for investigating the harm caused to children following its discovery of the rooms lay with the Department of Education as regulator and Waltham Forest. And you, as Ofsted, you're responsible for it as well. All of you are. Don't pass the buck and say that this other department's responsible. That's why this happens. This happens in the first place. Passing the buck is absolutely ridiculous. You are all equally responsible. The fact that you are the organisation, Ofsted is the organisation that oversees all educational needs of children in this country, you are responsible, regardless of how much you are trying to divert the fact that you are. You should have forced investigation. You should have pushed. You should have been involved in making sure that it happened. You do not absolve yourself of responsibility by saying it was somebody else's responsibility to do it. We're nearly there at the end of it. Although it failed to investigate after Ofsted's inspection, Waltham Forest says it will now commission a local case review, which it says will be wholly independent. It says it had not asked to review CCTV at any point because it did not know it existed. Waltham Forest also says it has offered counselling to families, but the families told the BBC their children need significant and wide-ranging help to address the abuse faced. Of course, they're going to have, at the very least, they're going to have PTSD, if not CPTSD, as well as other psychological issues on the back of this, as well as being hugely distrusting of everybody around them. And they will be living with the consequence of this for the rest of their life. Of course they will. Of course they will. It's absolutely disgraceful. Now, what this doesn't go deeply into, and one of my main concerns for this, is that it doesn't really highlight overly the fact that this was investigated by the police, and it was the police investigated it, and they continually put that investigation to the CPS. The CPS said that there was not enough evidence to say that people were abused, that children were abused. If you feel able to watch the video of the 17-minute video in there, I think it's called a prison cell in school or something like that. It's school and prison cells in the title. It will be in my description. And tell me that is not obvious that these children are being systematically abused on a daily basis. It's absolutely disgraceful. The 17-minute video also goes into more detail, and I'm sort of referring to some of that in this, and that CPS side of it is there. The failings here are widespread across everybody, and it's indicative, in my view, of the way that neurodivergent people are often treated within society and how they are seen, even within the education system. So what I'm going to do is you will find that I'm going to rant about things quite a bit moving forward on this. But for me, the main points here that are a problem are what I've just said there. There's no charge made. No charge. There's been no charge to any of these people. They have clearly abused their power. At some level, somebody was responsible for this. The people doing it are responsible. You know, you do not treat people the way that people have been treated. But on top of that, there are levels of people who are responsible. It can't say, I didn't know about it, therefore I wasn't responsible for it. You were responsible for it. The head teachers are responsible. The overarching organisation for it. There's various different organisations that are responsible for this. And to turn around and say, we didn't know it was happening, therefore we have no responsibility to it, the leadership changed, and that's how it was found out. Those people who were in leadership previously were aware of it. They knew that it was happening. So why are they not being held accountable for it? Why were they not reported to the Disclosure and Barring Service? Why have we not done something about it? To say we're going to learn from it and change. That's great. Let's do that. I don't believe it. I don't believe that is what's going to happen. It's such a flaky way of saying it that we're looking into it and that we're looking to strengthen the situation. What does that even mean? That doesn't mean anything. There needs to be clear guidance on what a calming room is. So 39 pupils confined for hours without food and drink. How is that not abusive? There is no question of the fact of locking a human being in a room without food and drink for hours is against human rights. It is clearly an abuse of power. Parents were misled. From my understanding, they were led by the school, but also by the investigation. That was had, it seems like they're basically being BS'd to a huge extent and saying, "Well, we didn't know about this," and passing the buck is just ridiculous. One of the things that if you watch the video, and it's mentioned in there, the only time that they seemed to intervene was due to the child damaging property, not the safety of the pupil. I will warn you, if you watch it, you will see children hitting themselves. You will see children hurting themselves. They don't go in to go and help them when they're doing that. But they do go in when they're going to potentially damage that camera. I think that tells us absolutely everything that we need. And it says that it appears that the teaching assistant struck the child in question after the shoes were thrown at the camera. I think it is absolutely categoric that is what happens if you watch the footage. The coat and bag situation, the fact that a child is having his coat and bag thrown at him while he's in there, knowing full well that he's then going to have to spend the whole time in there. How is that trying to help him to understand? I have issues around the concept of locking them in there completely anyway. That in itself is abusive, but then to basically go, oh, you're going to be in there for the rest of the day no matter what. How can he moderate his behaviour? Again, I have some issues around moderating behaviour, which I'll get into later. But you are basically saying this is a punishment. This is a punishment. You will be here for the rest of the day. The next time you will come out of here will be when you leave for the day. Why would that child want to spend time in that school? It's not a school. Let's be honest. It's a prison. It's clearly, if this was happening in these rooms, what was happening outside of it where the cameras weren't watching? They're prepared to treat these children like that while cameras are watching. What was happening when the cameras weren't being watched? There's bigger questions here. So at this point, I am going to put up some pictures of. So again, warning here. I'm going to give a little bit of time. So I'm giving you a warning that I'm going to be putting some pictures up of those rooms, and it does include pictures of the children, and they're clearly in distress. So I'm warning you that I will do a 10-second countdown before I put it on, just so that you're aware, because I don't want you to see it if you don't want to. But this is just an overarching picture of some of the things that are seen within the videos that show this. So the 17-minute video and the 1 minute and 5 second one. I've tried to make them show more of the room because I kind of want to look at that. And then what I'm going to do after that is I'm going to show you what my consideration of what I would assume a calming room would look like. And then, so sort of imagine now, while I'm talking, I suppose, and in the 10-second warning that I give you if you are going to watch this, what you would expect if you were in a special education school, what you would expect a calming room to look like with people with sensory issues, with people with sensory differences, and with people just in general. What would you expect it to look like in a school? And then think about what you would expect an isolation room in a prison to look like, and then which one does it look more like? So this is your 10-second warning. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Here we go. So as you'll have seen from that, one, they look like prison cells. They look like cells. They don't have anything in them. They, yes, they're padded, but the floor doesn't look exactly comfortable. It does have underneath it captioning, and that's from because I've taken them directly from the video. They're not really any that have not got those captions on for me to be able to show you properly what they look like. But I think probably most of us are going to agree that that is not an environment that you would want to be in. It's not an environment you would want to be locked in. There's when you sort of hear more about the conversation in the report, there is also discussion not just about the fact of people vomiting. In the video, it actually shows you this. It shows you the child vomiting, and then very quickly trying to cover up the fact that he's vomiting, so he's clearly scared. But there is also talk about the fact that some children were left naked. There is absolutely no expectation of a child to be left naked anyway, and covered in their own urine. No excuse. Absolutely no excuse. There is no excuse for that. You can't say that I didn't know. There's no way of saying you didn't know at all. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you what I would consider calming rooms. Now, I feel like these could be put in place in these schools, and they would be most of them. Some of them there would be some safety issues with them, but you could adapt them. My point of this is showing that if you adapted these, they could be safe while also accounting for sensory issues and making sure it's not a punishment, but is a place for a child to go and calm down. I also don't feel that a child should be locked in these for 6 hours, and this is with all of the sensory their sensory needs met or potentially met within there, and allowing them to process what's going on with around them. So let's have a look at what I personally consider what calming rooms would be in my mind. So here you've got so many different options of a calming room that you can use here. There are this one here, you've got a nice green light, you've got a sideboard here which looks like it's got little lights in it. There's a bed so that they can lay down. Here they've got cubes and things like that. There's again lighting. You've got sensory lighting here, which you could build into the wall if you felt like that was going to be a problem because of the fact they might be having a meltdown. Here you've got things for them to play with. You've got lights here. Again, this can all be put into the wall. It's padded. This would not cost any more money to make, but it would make all the difference to that child. It would help them, and you can set these calming rooms to look and feel exactly what the right way for that child. You know that child, or you should know that child well enough to know what their sensory needs are. Here again, lighting, soft furnishings. Again here, soft play toys. You've got it across the board here that these could so easily be put in place in those places, and rather than it being a punishment for the child, it's a place for them to go and calm down. Even having these here, the bean bags, they can move these around and they can sit on them, and they can in a place that's comfortable for them. Have the possibility of being able to dim the lights. These really would not take a lot, and I don't believe cost much more money, if any more money, than what it costs to be able to build those padded cells. They're terrible. They are there is nothing okay with the way that those cells were. So this is a company called Centec. I think it's Centec, which stands for Sensory Technology. I will link them into the. I will link them in the the description, because they look like they're really good. And I'm doing a lot with my bedroom at the moment to sort of help me with my sensors. So if anybody's interested in those for either themselves or somebody else in their life, then I'll link them in there, because it looks like they do the whole process of putting it together. I'm creating my own, but they give you a lot of advice and things like that about it. So maybe they could help out these apparent schools into how to create because these places have been called calming rooms and retreats. They're not calming and they're not retreats. The only thing is the child's retreating into them out of fear. So the reason why I felt like I needed to do this video is because I've personally had a really bad few days, and I had a 3-hour meltdown this morning, which resulted in me absolutely losing my temper, screaming, shouting, throwing things about for 3 hours. Because, and you know, I do that. I have those meltdowns. But what I did afterwards is I sat there and I was thinking about this situation, and I thought, imagine that I couldn't vocalize that distress, because many of these children, as it's pointed out in the videos, are non-speaking, are non-verbal, are not able to communicate what's actually happening to them. So imagine that you couldn't vocalize that distress, because a big part of my meltdowns is vocalizing, and a big part of me calming down from a meltdown is vocalizing. Then imagine, on top of that you are locked in a room for 4 hours plus. 4 hours, without having any way of being able to deal with your sensory differences, without being able to talk it through with anybody, without having anything there apart from yourself to harm. That's the only person that's there, is you. You're the only person that you can do anything to. Then imagine that you had no food, no drink, and no communication for that time. Just imagine that. And then finally, imagine that you were covered in your own vomit or urine, or you were being watched masturbating, or you were left to harm yourself with nothing but yourself to distract yourself. Would that make you feel like you lived in a safe world? Would that make you want to be part of the neurotypical world? This is how neurotypicals treat people in the view of that child. I'm not saying that, by the way. I don't think that all neurotypical people treat people that way. My point here is, how must that child feel? And what are you doing to that child to then go into the world that's already confusing, that's already difficult, that already hurts and already feels so unimaginably difficult and a mountain to climb just to communicate with people? Would you want to? No. I think the answer is clearly no. My biggest issue with this is the fact that everybody, well, not my biggest, one of my biggest issues with it is everybody seems to be blaming everyone else and passing the buck. Ofsted passed the buck to Waltham Forest Department of Education. The police, the police probably here, and I don't often stick up for the police because I think there are major issues around how they deal with people with neurodivergence, which I'd like to do a video on in the future. But the CPS clearly feel that they are not answerable. They feel like they are not answerable to anything. If you watch the videos, it is clear. To say that there was not clear evidence is absolute BS. And the fact that our CPS service, who are not answerable to anybody and don't have to be answerable to anybody, and can make finalised decisions without oversight, is disgraceful. It needs to change. There is also another thing that I will show. So the Panorama video, as I said, there is a Panorama investigation that was into a company called Life, which is a sports school. It's a private school, or was. I don't think they exist anymore. I can't really find out whether they do exist or not. I hope they don't, but I'm still trying to find out a bit more information on whether they exist or not. But this was also rated good by Ofsted. It's a privately ran, as I say, privately ran school that focuses on sport, which is personally, it's nothing. It's not nothing that would help me, but I understand how it would help, and I think it's a really good idea. What the Panorama investigation found is that there was systematic abuse to children with ADHD, autism, and developmental conditions by a team of teachers. They're not teachers. I just want to point that out. None of the vetting was done in a level of the way teachers are vetted, who were not fit for their role, and it's really clear that they're not. They were getting between £50,000 and £150,000 per child per year, and they were paid more than £2.2 million from Wirral Metropolitan Borough Council. Now, if you don't know where the Wirral is, it's in sort of Liverpool area, so the west of England. So there were much older children here, so the video on the Whitefield situation, it was younger children. This was older children, so they were hitting the older children in the head, tackling them. There was homophobic slurs. There was various homophobic slurs towards one of the pupils. Sexist and sexualized language used towards pupils, and degrading pictures drawn on a child's face by a member of staff. There was also horrible ableist language used by these thugs masquerading as a team of educators. I won't repeat any of the words because they're terrible. But they were, as I say, they were sexist. They were homophobic. There was sexualized behaviour. There was sexualization of the children there. There was sexualization of the person doing the investigation, who was pretending to be a teacher, a coach, I think is what they may have called them. My outrage here is obviously at the abuse, hugely at the abuse. And if you watch the Panorama show, I'm sure that you'll feel the same with that. But there is another issue that I have a major problem with here. And that is that the only person that seems to be prosecuted, and I will point out that he should have been prosecuted. I have no issue with the fact that he was prosecuted. But the only person that I can find that has been prosecuted throughout this is another neurodivergent person that was not fit to be taken on for the job. From what I've read, he was interviewed one day and the next day he was taken on as a coach. So clearly not gone through the correct vetting process. Anybody working with vulnerable people or children in this country have to go through a DBS check to ensure that they are the right person to do the role. And go through vigorous training and a vetting process. And that vetting process clearly did not happen. I completely agree that he did things wrong, and he should definitely have been prosecuted for it. My issue is that other people, I would argue generally neurotypical people, were not prosecuted. So that person is somebody called Elliot Miller. I feel awful saying his name, but I think it's only right that I do see it. So, but I kind of have to because of the fact that I want to state what his solicitor said. So it said, Mr. Miller is vulnerable. He has ADHD himself and was utterly inappropriate to be cast in this role. He was interviewed by the principal very informally and started work the next day and had no training or guidance. It does not excuse his conduct, and I agree with that. It doesn't excuse his conduct, but it perhaps explains it. None of these children did anything to encourage this type of activity. They were all utterly blameless. Completely agree. He is deeply remorseful. He has never been in trouble before. He has had a difficult 2 years. It doesn't excuse his conduct. It is wholly a breach of trust, and he accepts that. So he accepts that. I accept that. Completely agree. And he deserved the prosecution and the fact that he got 12 weeks in prison. Whether people feel that that's the correct number of long enough in prison or anything like that, I'm not going to get into. But he was prosecuted and brought to justice for it. But my issue is the fact that nobody else was. He has had difficulty. Has had a difficult time of it locally. He has had abuse. He has had threats. Of course, this is with the territory. So I don't agree with threatening anybody. I don't agree with vigilante justice in any way, shape, or form. The judicial system is there for a reason. Whether I agree with whether it's fit for purpose or not does not give us the right for us to be able to go out and sort of dole out justice the way that we feel that it should be done. It's there for a reason. So for me, he was to blame. But there were others. There were other people. There were other coaches and teachers there. I would argue that from my watching of the video, a lot of them also clearly were not trained. They were younger, possibly were neurodivergent themselves, and were not fit to be in the roles that they were in. Now, for me, there are 4 other main people that I feel are a problem here, and I am going to name these with gusto, not just quickly pass by it, because I was uncomfortable naming the other person. This I'm not uncomfortable with. So Ofsted is definitely an issue. Wirral Council, definitely issue. The CEO, Alistair Severamuto, he clearly is responsible for the fact that he owns this company. And Sarah Quilty, the head teacher, who in the video you will see witnesses this behaviour and laughs it off. She laughs it off. She doesn't even say for him to stop. she laughs it off. So in my view, and it obviously is only my view, that she is culpable for this. Why is she not being prosecuted? The question really needs to be answered. Why she was not prosecuted? It's disgraceful. It's absolutely disgraceful. The issue, so for me here as well, there is a major issue, and this is where I'm going to rant on about stuff that I feel personally. I feel we should stop forcing neurodivergent people to live as a neurotypical people. We are not the same, and we should not have to be forced to live within a world that damages us naturally. And we certainly should not be abused if we don't conform to behaviours and expectations that are outside of our capacity. I'm not saying that we shouldn't adapt. I'm not saying that. But the forcing to say you have to act like somebody who is neurotypical, otherwise you are going to end up getting locked in a cell. The irony there is that that's probably quite true. The numbers, the rates of people going to prison that are neurodivergent in comparison to somebody who's neurotypical for the same crime is huge, because we can't protect ourselves against the judicial system. So it's often used against us because it's not understood. So for me, what was so jarring about this is that it happened to people with much, much higher support needs than I have on a day-to-day basis. But it resonated so deeply. Systems, public services, healthcare, criminal justice system, and education, they are all limited in limited access to us, and are stacked against us as a whole. But these are the most vulnerable within the autistic community. These people are the most vulnerable within the autistic community. With their own strengths and challenges, the one thing that often the people that are being treated like this don't have, that many watching this video may have, is a voice, either literally unable to communicate in the traditional sense, or one that is that clearly is not being heard. I'm not saying anyone has to or has or even should stand up, but if you feel that you can, I really would want anybody to stand up and advocate if they feel that they can. And I really want to say to parents, if you are a parent, check the school your child is in. Ask to see all facilities, and if you are refused, there is a reason that there is cause for you to report this. If somebody is saying no, you cannot see all the facilities in this school that you are sending your child to, they are saying that for a reason. And if they're not saying it for a reason, they should be showing you it. So I really would like parents to look at things with curiosity and caution. And I'm not saying that means that necessarily the school is doing something wrong, but it is cause for concern that they're not allowing you to see the facilities in a school that you are sending your child in to be protected in. So please ask to see, and if they won't let you see, report it. And if you see any problems, report it. Do not be worried about reporting things. It is your right to report concerns to various different authorities. So with all the will in the world, I know why parents do it. They want to trust the organisation that's looking after their child, and by all means trust them, but be cautious and be curious. That's all I would say on the matter. Be curious about it and want to see more, and that school should want you to want to see more. They're meant to be there to protect and support your child as much as you are. They're in loco parentis. They're there because to be a parent when the parent is not there, and that's how they should treat your child. And if they're treating your child any different to that, then you have a right to say something about it. So, as you may have heard from that, I really truly believe that we should advocate where we can, and I want to do this a lot more. As I said at the beginning of the video, I kind of wanted to wait to do these videos, but I feel pushed into doing this. So I've been thinking about doing these types of videos more. And I'd really like to know what people think about it, because clearly they're quite nuanced, and they're quite traumatic at times. And I kind of realised that I'm kind about the services that fail us, that actively refuse to make adjustments for us and refuse to understand us. I know we have to work within them, but it has to be reciprocated. They have to reciprocate to us. Companies and organisations and services have to reciprocate in understanding us as much as we need to understand for them. Advocacy only works when someone is listening. Currently, I am not sure many are listening. I think some organisations really are trying to. But I think there's some that are actively turning away from it. And I actually feel, unfortunately, that a lot of those are public services. We need equity that will allow us then to have equality, but we currently do not have the equity. And the children in this video have clearly started with their experience of the neurotypical world being given even more negative equity than they began with. They're going into a neurotypical world, which we all know as neurodivergent people is a huge struggle for us, with a huge amount of negative equity. They're going into it worse off than they went into that school. As I've said many times in this video, I don't believe this is all. I don't know whether I've said it many times in this video, but I need to make that point, is that I don't believe this is every school. But the thing is, if there's 40 children here, 39 children, and this BBC report has found that it's multiple schools. So let's say it's 40 children in 10 schools. That's 400 children that's there at that point. Let's say at any given time. So that are then going into the world every year, or every 5 years or 4 years, or however long they're at the school. It doesn't really matter how long it is. It's a lot of children going into the world with even less capacity to be able to deal with the neurotypical world and be fearful of it even more than what they were at the beginning of going to that school, which they went to go into the world to be able to live in it easier. Equity is talked about a lot, but it requires two-way open conversation that believes the person, that you listen to the person's needs. Equity affects everyone. I find it disingenuous to talk about it, but snarl at any support that is requested. I found this, that when I've looked to give myself equity and to explain my equitable needs, I was basically explaining where my starting point is and what I need to be able to, or what I think I may need to be able to get to an equal level. I'm often snarled at because of the fact it's an invisible disability. But I'd argue it's not an invisible disability. It's not invisible. People are choosing to not see it. It's clearly there. It's clearly obvious to people because of the fact they're treating me differently. They're treating these children differently. They're treating everybody probably watching these videos differently. So you see it, but you choose to not acknowledge it. The problem with Whitefield is that it clearly had no equity. That clearly no equity is given. As no prosecutions were made, and at the life school only another neurodivergent person was prosecuted, so there is no equity there. There's no equality in the thought process of this. That tells me that all I need to know about how neurodivergent people are seen in society. This has told me so much about how much more work we still have to do, and it's put a fire up my bum for me to be able to go, this is where I want to do some of my focus. I'm still going to do all of the stuff that I've been doing before, but I do want to put some of my focus in this. So some of the things that I'm thinking of doing videos on are representation of neurodivergent people in the media, employment and how employment sort of reasonable adjustments, and how maybe employers are missing things. Definitely the legal system, public services and healthcare and education. They're the kind of things that I kind of want to sort of break down and look at and do a bit of these ranty videos. I'm kind of on the thumbnail of this put a red flag, and I kind of do want to do a red flag series. Obviously, this is a whole bunch of red flags. And this is meant for my opinion, and for me sharing this with other people so that they see it. If you haven't seen this, then it allows you to be able to see it. And I think, and that's, I'm not an expert in any of this stuff. It's just my feelings on these things, and I only have a finite amount of time to talk about them in these videos. And the reason why I ask everybody else to get involved in this is because there is such a plethora of knowledge and understanding from other people that I really want to hear it. And I am seeing a lot of comments recently that are adding into my videos in more scientific ways, and that's fantastic. I love seeing that, because I don't always come at it when I'm in these videos as a scientific thought process. I come about it in sometimes an emotional sense, or a sort of a visceral, my reaction sense to things. But I do see things from a scientific perspective. I just don't feel qualified enough to be able to put that in a video, or confident enough at this point for me to be able to talk about it in such depth. And maybe I will do in the future. Anyway, this video has been quite hard on me. I'm sure it's been hard on a lot of people listening to it. But all I would say and end this with is, if you can and you want to advocate, please do so. I'm certainly going to be pushing myself to do more advocacy work moving forward, because this has shown me how much work we really, really do have left to do. And I've seen it across my life. And I thought that maybe people who had higher support needs were getting those support needs, but clearly not. And I feel I have a voice, and I am going to use it. I am going to use it moving forward. Thank you very much for watching this video. I hope it wasn't too much, but I had to say it, and I had to share this with everybody. Thank you very much, and I hope to see you in the next one, which will be more on the sort of stuff that I've done in the past. Thank you. Bye.